Happy Sunday, everyone. I had a bit of a wild night last night. Might have partied a little too hard. Not really thinking completely clear right now. But we're making this video because Nintendo might have finally fixed something that was a deterrent for some third-party games. Now, we all know that Nintendo Switch has a storage capacity issue on the local level, but there's also a storage capacity issue on the game cartridge level. If you remember in the past, games like Doom would be on the 16 gigabyte cart, but then also require a 9 gigabyte download to play the multiplayer. The same was basically true with LA Noire, not from a multiplayer perspective, but you had a big additional download. Same has basically been true with almost every major third-party game. They were using the 8 gigabyte and the 16 gigabyte carts just for cost-saving reasons, if we're being completely honest. I have talked to several indie developers over the past year who wish to remain anonymous about about the cost of bringing games to Switch physically. And it's not so much the packaging and the shipping and all that, it's the cartridge cost. You do have to buy the cartridges in bulk directly from Nintendo, and the prices on those cartridges are quite expensive, especially compared to, let's say, a disc for another platform, in addition to all the licensing fees and everything they have to pay to have the game on Switch anyways, and have that Nintendo Switch branding on the box art and all that. So it's very interesting to hear about this, because that's why I presumed even AAA third parties were just using smaller game cartridges than were available. Now, the 32 gigabyte game cartridge has actually been available almost since launch, really. Nintendo announced it was available shortly after launch. The standard size was supposed to be 16. They said 32 was coming later in 2017, and it did. There was a Dragon Quest combo pack that released in Japan that ended up, having a 32 gigabyte cart, and it is the only known game on Switch that anyone is aware of. Maybe there's one out there I haven't heard about that actually uses a 32 gigabyte game cartridge. And it baffled some people why games like Doom and stuff weren't using it. And from what I hear, it's all about how expensive those game cartridges are. People aren't just willing to eat another big loss in a physical version with those game carts. We even saw indie games that released in a physical version on Switch, several cost $10 more, and that was to cover the cost of the game cartridge. So we're talking several dollars compared to pennies for the disc. So this is something that I thought was going to be an issue on Switch for quite some time, and I didn't think we'd see many games using bigger than 16 for a while. Well, there's a new interview with Virtuous. They are the group that is porting Final Fantasy X and X2 and 12 to the Nintendo Switch, and it turns out they are actually using a 32 gigabyte cartridge for one of the games. Here's what it said in an interview that was translated on Nintendo Everything. This is on lessons learned from having to port the games to Switch. For Nintendo Switch, the main challenge was the package size. On the previous raw data size, it could reach up to 50 gigabytes. This is about Final Fantasy 12, by the way. That was on PlayStation 4. It actually was about 50 gigabytes in size. This much data simply cannot fit on a single Switch game card. So we had to analyze and modify the data cooking pipeline and manage to fit the game on a 32 gigabyte card without any impact on visual quality or loading performance. Now, this is huge because this will be the first game available worldwide on a 32 gigabyte card. Again, these cards have existed, but with the cost of the cards, that's why you even saw games that could fit on a 16 gigabyte card releasing on an 8 gigabyte card in the past. So this to me, the fact that Virtuous and Square are willing to use a 32 gigabyte card, it's not just about not making people download extra data, it's also that the cost of the cards must be coming down in 2019. I've talked in the past how I thought the biggest way to solve all of this is for Nintendo to eat losses on the game cartridges that they're going to gain back on the licensing fees for it to even be on the platform in the first place. If you didn't know, Nintendo makes like a 30% cut of like almost every single game sold on their platform, so they can more than cover the cost of the cartridge themselves, but it's not usual for a platform that has a proprietary format to do that. They almost always put the cost on the people who want to bring their games to the platform. So it would have been an unusual thing, but it also, I thought, a necessary thing if we ever thought Nintendo Nintendo Switch was going to be more viable in the physical format without the extra downloads. This is also really important because down the line, if Nintendo Switch's services, much like the Wii, ever get turned off, because Wii gets turned off in just a matter of days now. The Nintendo Wii online shop is going to be gone, and then at some point in the future, you won't even be able to re-download your purchases anymore. You still will be able to do that after the 30th, but they do note a future date you won't be able to do that anymore. Whenever that happens to Switch, because I think it's inevitable at some point, whether it's 10, 15, 20 years from now, whenever that might happen, it is notable that having all the data on the cartridge keeps the game playable even after that. Whereas when you have to have a required download to play, once you can't download anymore, and you're trying to put stuff on a new Switch, you won't be able to play those games anymore. That's what's going to happen with Doom. You won't be. Granted, the Doom multiplayer servers will probably go down long before Doom itself does, but it's just interesting to me that the prices seem to have come down enough for a major AAA publisher to now use it for a port. And that's the curious thing. They are using this on a port that may or may not sell that well. And I think that the costs must have come down, and I think the use of the 32 gigabyte carts is going to become much more common throughout 2019 and 2020. Now, some people might be like, well, don't we really need the 64 gigabyte carts to fix everything? And how far off are the 64 gigabyte carts? What I have been told behind the scenes is that the 64 gigabyte carts do currently exist. However, the cost to use those carts is nowhere near viable. So upon hearing this story, I reached out to a couple of my indie friends, and they told me that on their end, what they heard from Nintendo, apparently Nintendo sent an email out about game cartridges about a month ago, and the cost of the cartridges has come down significantly, possibly even cut in half. But the 64 gigabyte cartridge that Nintendo referenced in that email is not cut in price. It is available if there's a publisher who wants to use it, but it's not in mass production right now, and the cost of that cartridge is insanely high. I have now heard the 32 gigabyte cartridges, in wake of this story, are actually starting to be mass produced now. They've always existed for the past year or so. They've had these, but they weren't produced at a quantity that reduced the cost. And now they are, because more publishers are interested in using the 32 gigabyte cartridges. And basically what I heard from developers say is they've told Nintendo, we will use the 32 gigabyte cartridge if you can bring the price down. And Nintendo said, well, the only way we can do that is to mass produce it, obviously, and just hope the technology itself gets cheaper. And it uses flash memory, which, there's a worldwide shortage on that, even still in 2019. That's why RAM prices and SSD prices for computers are still so high. But Nintendo apparently has found a way to cut the cost, or Nintendo themselves just said, look, we're not going to sell everything at cost or sell everything for profit. We'll take a small loss on these cartridges for you to bring your game out. We'll make it up off the game sales. That might have also been what happened as well. We're not sure, because that would require Nintendo unveiling this information, and Nintendo never unveils the information. It's all guesswork at this point. But I think this is really great news for Nintendo Switch, just in terms of people who like to own games physically and would like to have all, basically, besides game updates, have the entire game on a single physical cartridge. Yes, 32 gigabyte isn't big enough for everything. 64 gigabyte would be preferred. And while 64 gigabyte cards, as I said, I heard do exist, they're not cost effective, and we're not going to see them on the market for a long time. I mean, I think Spawnwave actually made, John over there made a video on this as well today, and he mentioned at the end that, it's possible the 64 gigabyte cards become normal by the end of the current Switch generation, so it becomes more of a normal thing for the next generation Switch, or next generation whatever. I hope it's a Switch, and I hope they just keep the same cartridge format, because then it'll be much more cost effective than creating a new cartridge format just for the new Switch. Like, if the new Switch can run all the old games and all the new games, then why would you change the cartridge format up? Doesn't make any sense. And the cartridge format, they even mentioned the loading times not being impacted. That's what's nice about the cartridge, is it is fast, and that's one reason Nintendo went with it. You don't have to install your games on Switch. And it kind of felt like you had to with AAA third-party games, because you'd only get some on the cartridge and you have to download the rest. But now you're doesn't look like we're going to have to do that very often moving forward if companies are willing to compress the game enough to fit it on a 32 gigabyte cartridge. And there's a lot of AAA third-party games that could do that. Doom could have did that. Doom Eternal could be using a 32 gigabyte cartridge potentially. The next Wolfenstein could be. Mortal Kombat 11, if it needs it, could be using a 32 gig. There's a lot of, I'm hearing some whispers about some other AAA games that aren't announced for the platform yet that are going to be using the 32 gigabyte cartridge. So there's a lot of interesting things happening here, and I'm pretty excited just for physical owners to finally have maybe some more confidence in their purchases moving forward. This doesn't solve the inherent issue, of course, of like Final Fantasy X and X2, where here in the United States, only one of those games is going to be available physically. The other one's going to be available digitally. I do think that's a separate issue. I do think in Japan, they're both going to be on one cartridge, or like one cartridge for each. But it's weird that like Japan always seems to get that treatment. They got that with Resident Evil, if you didn't know. Resident Evil Revelations 1 and 2, they actually got them both physically in the thing. We got one digitally, one physically. So that's another issue. It is related to cost, but it's also related to ease of production and just cutting costs in general. And this has actually happened, by the way, on Xbox and PlayStation 2. There have been like dual packs of games where one's a download and one's on the disc. So this isn't even exclusive to Switch, but it happens more often on Switch. And unfortunately, that's something we're still dealing with. And I would rather just see them both be put on a 32 gigabyte cart and just call it good, if that would even be possible. But it is what it is, and that's an entirely separate issue that we'll have to get worked out over time. But for now, it looks like the cost of the 32 gigabyte carts has come down. That should mean the cost of the 16 gigabyte carts have come down as well. So a lot of these physical games that could fit on a 16 gigabyte, but we're using the 8 to cut cost, might in the future be using 16 gigabyte carts. So we can start getting these games without requiring massive gigabytes of downloads. There's still going to be those day one patches that are huge. That's just a thing that happens in gaming today. But at least the base game should be there on cartridges for most games moving forward, and then you just pop it in and play with or without the day one update. So I'm pretty excited about it. I think you should be excited about it too if you happen to be a physical owner of games. I know that I'm going to be happy that I can, in the future anyways, pick up a third-party game, especially third-party games on Switch, when I'm out and about, and not have to worry about connecting to the internet to actually download the rest to play. I can just play it right away. That's going to be really cool, especially if I end up going to E3 this year and picking up a game, because I don't always want to connect to hotel Wi-Fi with my Switch when I'm doing other work and uploading other videos during that time. So thank you guys so much for tuning in. You guys let me know your thoughts on this down in the comments below. Again, at 64 gigabyte carts, I don't think we're going to see those in a long time. They do exist, but cost reasons, we're not. I don't think anyone, even Nintendo, like Nintendo, even using a 32 gigabyte cart would be shocking, just because Nintendo is so good at compression on their games. But it is what it is. You guys let me know what you think. The Nintendo Switch Super Smash Bros. Ultimate Bundle giveaway is still going on, by the way, through the Gleam.io link down in the description. When we hit 50,000 subscribers, which we are on our way to 45,000 right now, so we are creeping closer and closer every single day. When we hit that, I'll be announcing the winner of the giveaway, and then we'll kind of refresh things in 2019 and start doing monthly giveaways after that, where we're not going to base it on hitting certain subscriber goals in the future. We're just going to be, hey, look, every month we're going to do some sort of giveaway. Some giveaways will be bigger than others, some will be smaller than others, but it's going to just be my way of saying thanks to you guys for tuning in and watching all of my videos. I appreciate your support, whether it's on Patreon at patreon.com/NintendoPrime, through super chats or donations during live streams, becoming a member on YouTube, doing a Twitch Prime sub or whatever, or just watching and sharing my videos, dropping likes. I appreciate all of it. Thank you for tuning in, and I'll catch all of you guys in the next one.